Hello, everybody, and welcome to the G and Finn Show here on 92.1 Rebel Radio. It's a kind of blah day here in Oxford, Mississippi. My name's George Ajiro.
And I'm John Finnegan.
How are you doing today, John?
I'm making it, you know?
Yeah.
It's getting to be crunch time, finals in a few weeks, but, I mean, yesterday was a heck of a day. It was tough to get some studying done. 26 games on yesterday.
Wow.
Across the NFL, MLB World Series, NHL, and the NBA. It's kind of the sports equinox, you know, the opposite of the All-Star break. A lot going on in sports this week.
Oh, yeah. It was a good weekend all around. I think we're going to start with college football. How does that sound for you?
It sounds like a plan to me.
All right, yeah, we're going to hop in. It was a wild weekend in college football. We have a new number one team in the country. LSU is number one over Alabama. It's got to be a strength of schedule thing. I mean, Alabama took it to Arkansas. They crushed them. There was no contest. LSU just had a bigger win. I think it's that simple.
I mean, they don't have the toughest schedule in the country. I think A&M does, but they've by far the best wins, the most convincing wins. When you can have an exceptional Florida team come to town and just take the game away from them and just shut them down, it's things like that that kind of prove. I think they deserve to be number one.
I agree, yeah. Like I genuinely think that this isn't just a ranking thing. I genuinely believe that this LSU team is the best team in the country.
So do I. And point of note, last time SEC team other than Alabama was ranked number one in the country, 2014, Mississippi State.
Wow.
So first time in 5 years, anybody except Alabama in the SEC has appeared at the top of the charts.
And I mean, other than Alabama, sure there have been other teams. What was it, Clemson probably at some point? I think it's just been them, but between those two teams.
Yeah.
I mean, Alabama hasn't really taken any losses.
Well, Clemson was one, I think, coming into the season this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, after winning the Natty, you have to expect that.
Yeah, LSU deserves to be number one this year.
I mean, like, just looking at that game from this weekend, they squeaked it out. It was 23-20 over Auburn, but
it was close. But it didn't feel that close. Did you catch that game?
I caught a good chunk of it, but yeah, you're right. It didn't feel as close as it was, and I genuinely don't think it was. Like, I really feel that LSU had control of that game, even going in or getting down to Auburn at points. I don't think LSU ever really lost their grip on the game.
No, it felt like, you know, to me, I mean, I know it's a low-scoring game compared to the Florida game, but the comparison I draw there is Florida kept it close for a while. Good teams can play the best team in the country close, and they do often, but the difference is, do you come away at the end? LSU didn't wind up pulling away, so a lot of respect to Auburn on that performance, but because they didn't let LSU take it away from them in the fourth quarter. They were in the game the whole game. It didn't feel like it, but, I mean, as far as the points go, they were in it. But for me, the most important thing about that game, not that the better team won, not that Auburn did show up, but Joe Burrow.
He's just been incredible all year. No, I really think that a game like this shows that it's not a fluke, that it's not that they've been playing some weaker teams. I would even go earlier and say that, like you mentioned earlier, the Florida game showed that too, but this really cements it to me. I'm looking at some of the other quarterbacks that are out there, and yeah, I know the Heisman doesn't have to go to a quarterback, but for the most part it will.
Well, I mean, the whole point is to go to the most impactful player in college football. You know,
it's going to be the quarterback.
It's tough. I mean, if you're the difference between an 0-12 and a 4-8 season, that's big. That's a 4-game swing. But when you're the difference between an 8-win season and a 10, 11, 12 more win season, that's the guy Heisman's going to go to no matter what position you're at. Joe Burrow has been that guy for LSU. Not a lot has changed with LSU. They still, I mean, they're still the LSU team that everybody knows and everybody expects. Except now they have a quarterback. And when was the last time LSU had a decent quarterback? Mettenberger?
I mean, he might have been decent at the college level.
At the college level,
he was decent. But I don't think any of his skills really translate. The thing is, Burrow just looks different than everyone. He has that, I don't want to say pro style. I don't want to say anything like that.
He's got the it factor.
He does. He's got a good mix of that self-confidence, that swagger, and just overall skill and talent.
And I've been watching a good bit of LSU this year Because, don't get me wrong, I don't like LSU, but it's nice to have an SEC team doing exceptionally well that's not Alabama.
Yeah, and it's just been impressive to watch because, it is the same LSU team we're used to seeing,
Plus
but it feels different. It feels different because, one, they have a quarterback, and two, it doesn't feel like their defense is just carrying them. Their defense has been good. They've been solid. But this offense is putting up big numbers week after week after week. I mean, just look at it this way for Burrow specifically. He's thrown the second most yards and the second most touchdowns in all of college football. He has the highest completion percentage in all of football, and he's only thrown 4 interceptions. One of those was against Auburn.
Yeah, you know what? He's making this team. He's leading this team. He's exactly the kind of quarterback this team needed to take him to the next level, and right now they're there. I would be. So, how do you think the? I think. How do you think the conference championship's going to shape up?
Ooh.
Because here's the thing: Alabama and LSU are the 2 best teams in the conference. They are both in the SEC West.
Yeah.
Who do you think it's Florida in the East?
Yeah, at this point, I do think it is Florida coming out of the East.
And
they're yet to play Georgia.
So I don't see a loss on Alabama or LSU's schedule
Until they play
each other.
Which, isn't that in 2 weeks, is that? Or is that this coming week?
I
think that might be this weekend.
Let me double check for you.
Yeah,
but
double check on me.
You think
that.
So I think it's going to be Alabama or LSU.
Yeah, against Florida.
The winner of that game against Florida is my guess. Now, let's say you got a one-loss LSU team. Let's say Alabama wins. You got a one-loss LSU team. The conference championship game starts to matter a little bit more because maybe Alabama's at 3, and maybe they lose there. I don't expect them to, but
no,
I think
either.
The conference championship game may wind up mattering
a
lot more than it normally does, especially if maybe Alabama or LSU drops a game. So then all of a sudden we've got a little bit more discussion about who should be in that game.
Oh, yeah. So my big thing with this is I think once you get to that point in the season and why they're putting Alabama at 2 instead of at 1 where they usually sit is the health of players, specifically Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, he's hurt. He's not super injury prone per se, but he's hurt right now. It's that simple. He's not playing.
And that's a difference maker.
That is a huge difference maker because Alabama really focuses on the play of the quarterback.
And that's a recent development.
That's not like a thing that's been going on for a while.
Yeah, they've been historically the same style team as LSU. Just exceptional defense, run it up the middle, and it'll work. But now those teams have quarterbacks.
They can do that now, though.
Yeah, they're still more than capable of winning games like that.
I think Najee Harris is probably my favorite running back to watch this year in college football. He's just got that good mix of speed, agility, shiftiness, and he's not afraid to drop a shoulder and go through a man instead of around him.
And he'll do it.
Oh, he's done it. We saw that when we went to Tuscaloosa. He put down some defensive backs.
Yeah, pretty easily.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, LSU will travel to Tuscaloosa to take on the Tide, not this weekend, but next weekend.
Okay,
on November 9th.
Sure about that.
I'm assuming they're going to get game day.
Oh, I actually saw. No, that's a CBS game.
Is that a CBS game?
Yeah, that's midday. That's at 2:30.
Gotcha.
That's something else. I don't understand. I don't get it. How are you going to take a game like that where it's going to be 1 and 2 in the country most likely?
Game of the century.
Yeah, and not give them the night game, not give them prime time. You give them 2:30.
I don't know.
Come on.
But Ole Miss did get a 3 o'clock game for New Mexico State at home.
That's this coming weekend.
That's not this coming weekend. This weekend we travel to Auburn.
To Auburn. Excuse me.
Next home game will be mid-afternoon. I will take it. It'll be a little warmer. It's probably going to start getting a little bit chilly.
I mean, by then it should be cold out.
College game day, it looks like leaked, will be going to Memphis.
Ooh, who are they playing?
Memphis SMU.
SMU? I don't know about that game.
I might go.
I mean, it's close. It's close enough, yeah.
The Liberty Bowl is just hilarious to me. It's a weird spot. It really is.
It really is.
But a little more around the college football world. Over in the Big 12, Oklahoma dropped a big game to Kansas State.
And they dropped 5 slots in the rankings. They dropped down to 10.
And, they always say football's a game of inches. If you caught this one, did you catch this one?
I caught a chunk of it.
So at the end of the game, if you didn't see, Oklahoma went for an onside kick.
Oh, yeah.
And they got it.
Yeah.
And they had a decent return on it, and they were about on 25. However, looked like the ball was touched just half a yard or so before that 10-yard line. But one interesting ruling, the player that touched it on Oklahoma was being blocked. They picked up the block before 10 yards, which you're allowed to do. I had to look at the rules, and for NCAA, it's different in the NFL, but for the NCAA, if you're actively being blocked, you don't count if you touch the ball, even if you're on the team attempting an onside kick. So it looked like that ruling may be questionable. It would have been you always want to see a team get a shot if you're a neutral observer, but they do drop 5 spots to 10 overall. Out of the playoff discussion, in your opinion?
I mean, so thing is with this is now this will come down to what other teams do. Looking at other teams and their schedule, you've got to look. I only see one loss for either LSU or Alabama. I don't see more than that. I don't see any losses for Ohio State. They're looking dangerous. I don't see any losses for Clemson.
I think the only
I don't see any
Clemson
losses for Penn State either. So, realistically, I don't think they're going to put.
They need a lot of teams to drop games.
And I don't think that they will, because these teams, it's been crazy this year. There's been a lot of back and forth and a lot of changes. I mean, no one going into this weekend thought, Kansas State, that's a lock. That's a win over Oklahoma. You'd never put that down there. But it happened. You can expect something like that to maybe happen to, I'd say, Clemson or Penn State. But even then, if I'm on the committee, I'm putting a one-loss SEC West team in over Oklahoma. Especially because that loss for LSU or Alabama is going to be the other team.
And whichever team wins that game will be number one in the country, which means whoever lost, your only loss is to the number one team in the country.
Exactly.
And this was close, just based on the AP poll, which goes on that point system they have. 1476 for LSU, 1474 for Alabama.
And the thing is, what's even more interesting about that is in the coaches poll, it's still Bama 1, LSU 2.
So, I mean, for me, the coaches poll might go a little bit more on the eye test.
I think it does.
Maybe a little bit. I mean, there's obviously a little more bias in there, which isn't a bad thing. You can't do everything based on statistics. That's why they did away with the BCS. But, it's going to be a heck of a game in a couple weeks. We'll definitely be talking about that more next week as they shape up. Michigan up north crushed Notre Dame.
That was not it wasn't a good game.
I didn't enjoy watching it. It was pouring rain.
Bad game.
My roommate's a Michigan fan, and he was happy, so that was dreadful. Michigan goes up to 14. Notre Dame fell 8
slots. I think that's a little bit, not soon enough, I think that probably should have happened before.
Yeah.
Notre Dame.
They didn't give any reason to be ranked that high.
No.
That was just straight poll inertia and no bad losses.
I mean, the one to Georgia, but at the time Georgia was 3.
Yeah, so
you expect them to hold solid where they were at.
Ohio State, they just thrashed Wisconsin.
Yeah, they just pretty much threw them out.
They
38
they
to
kicked
7.
them out of the playoff discussion.
No doubt. I mean, after losing to Illinois, I don't think Wisconsin would have been anyway. But still.
But that being said, pretty good game out west. Oregon versus Washington. That was a pretty good game. 37-35. Gordon played really well, but
oddly enough, you see what
you have a standout player from that game?
Oh yeah, Oregon's running back C.J. Verdell. He literally ran away with that game. He was awesome. 23 carries, 257 yards, 3 touchdowns.
Named Offensive Player of the Week.
Yeah, I get it. But the thing is, it was still such a tight game.
He ran for 257 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's insane.
Yeah, thing is, especially in that conference, where it's all, high-flying, throwing attack.
It's Mike Leach. Leach conference.
Yeah, well, it was Oregon's running back.
Well, no, I'm just saying, the conference he's in, it's going to be one that airs it out.
It's the Mike Leach conference, pretty much,
Yeah, first Oregon player to get the Walter Camp National Player of the Week honor since 2004.
Wow. That's kind of surprising, knowing the quality of player that they've had. I mean, shoot. Herbert.
I'm sorry, 9th since 2004.
Oh, gotcha.
Last player to get it, Marcus Mariota.
Yeah, there we go. That's
at the college level, exceptional quarterback.
We'll get to him a little bit later.
And then a little bit more Big 12. TCU took down Texas.
Texas is not back.
And you know what?
I'm tired of it.
And you know what? You said it a couple weeks ago. You weren't yet a believer in Sam Ehlinger. and he gave you a pretty good argument.
Yeah, he did.
Through 4 interceptions in a loss to TCU.
And thing is,
not a good TCU team either.
It's not a great TCU team. But thing is, for TCU, this is another talking point for me, I guess, about Ehlinger. He got outplayed by a true freshman for TCU. TCU's quarterback, Dugan, almost 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, and ran for a touchdown. Ehlinger just got outplayed.
Yeah.
It was that simple. And TCU, they're 4-3. Like this is not a great team by any means.
No.
It's not a good TCU team.
You got anything else that stood out for you in college football this weekend?
Nothing really in particular, other than I guess I could say Ohio State is also one team that's really cementing itself as like firmly in place and ready to like take the next step and go into the playoff.
Yeah, they don't need any more quality wins. They just need to avoid some bad losses.
And I think they'll do it. I'm going to take a look at their schedule real fast. I don't see anything else on there. They play Maryland, Rutgers. They've got 2 good games, but they're good games. They've got 5 Penn State, and they've got at Michigan. I don't see them losing at Michigan.
Neither do I.
The Penn State game in Ohio will likely be the decider of which of those 2 teams makes it to the playoff or not.
Yeah, I think so
because that
too.
Penn State team's good too.
That might be a Big Ten game I go out of my way to watch, and that's saying something.
I mean, I'm looking at Penn State. Penn State. All they've got is Minnesota, Indiana, Ohio State, and Rutgers. I think whichever wins that game will make it to the playoff themselves.
Yeah. So
what about you? Anything else?
Yeah, I think that's all we got in college football for this week. Obviously, we're going to be previewing this coming week on Friday. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back at it with some NFL action in just a few. And welcome back to the G and Finn Show. We just got done with our college football segment. We're going to come at you with a little bit of Sunday action, some NFL. What was kind of your game to watch?
I mean, obviously it was going to be Sunday Night Football, but we don't want to spend the whole time on that. There were a couple other good games throughout the weekend, or throughout the Sunday, excuse me. I was really interested to watch the Seahawks and the Falcons, mostly for our Terminator son, DK Metcalf, who had himself a weird kind of game, you know?
Yeah, I mean, 5 targets, 3 catches, 13 yards, but 2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns. 2.
I was so confused because, I had him on my fantasy team. I didn't catch that game live. I forget which one I was watching at the time. But I got, a couple notifications. I was seeing it on Twitter because, I've got notifications on for anybody that supports my boy. But I was like, damn, DK's having himself a day. And then I went back and watched the highlight video. Yeah, I started him.
Wow.
I'm a believer, dude. And he was the difference maker for me this week.
Yeah,
I won by 6. So
nice.
Yeah, and nobody on my bench did anything. Yeah, I'm currently 3-0 in games when I have Saquon, and 0-5 in games where I do not.
So you're 3-5.
I didn't say that, but I mean, take it how you will. Anyway,
I think I'm 6-3 on the season, but
right,
that's just me.
Cool guy. But that being said, so I was like, man, DK went off. I'm excited to watch his highlights, see him put some guys in the dirt, and I'm like, damn. He really just had 2 touchdowns.
It's it was 3 plays. Like his highlight reel was 45
a pass
seconds.
from the 3, a pass from the 5, and he had a 5-yard.
like a 5-yard little
curl.
out or something.
Something like that. It was a weird stat line, but I'll take it. We love our guy getting on the board. 4 touchdowns for current NFL Rebs. Evan Ingram tacked one on National Tight Ends Day, as did who was it that had one?
Former Reb. I don't think it was AJ, but
AJ did not get one.
I'll take a look at that game.
Yeah, check the Ole Miss football Twitter. I'm sure they posted about it. But everybody was celebrating National Tight Ends Day yesterday. Kelsey tacked on a TD. Jets tight end Ryan Griffin tacked on 2.
No, I was right. AJ did have a touchdown.
AJ had a TD?
Yeah, he was 2 or 3, 11 yards and a touchdown.
That's another
really weird stat line. Yeah, that's not normal.
One catch that wasn't in the end zone. But we like our guys getting some points on the board. Eagles. If I'm the Eagles, that game against Buffalo, that showed me Wentz is our guy.
Yeah, you've got to get excited after a game like that.
That's a franchise quarterback win right there. That's a game you don't win without your guy.
No. I mean, and this is a good Buffalo defense. We expected them to come in and play, and they just got torched. This is a good Buffalo pass defense. They lit up 31 points. I don't know what else to say about that other than they just got lit up. And the thing is, it's not as though Josh Allen played poorly.
No, he had a game. And I wasn't a believer in him for a while, but he's doing well this year, and being able to have your defense keep your offense off the field, let you guys rest up, look over some film on what you did last drive. I mean, that's always beneficial. That game, do you think Buffalo's D isn't as good as we thought it was, or do you think Philadelphia offense is a lot better than we may have thought?
I think Philly's offense, just kind of came alive because, this is a defense that, they still got theirs. There were no interceptions thrown by either quarterback. Brandon Graham. No, Boston Scott, fumbled. Wentz fumbled, but it was recovered, and Brandon Graham received a Buffalo fumble. But I don't know if this is necessarily as much of an indictment on the Buffalo defense as it is just the Philadelphia offense finally coming alive.
And coming alive in ways that they may not have expected. Ertz only got a few targets. He was a non-factor, and that's a guy that's been their go-to in past seasons. And Buffalo and Philly don't play very often.
They don't.
AFC East, NFC East, it's, that's the
once every
matchup
couple years,
this year.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's once every 4,
Yeah.
But,
I
think I got to agree. I think the Eagles' offense just came alive. Buffalo's D still legit, but not enough this week. Other couple games, Colts and Chargers squeaked out a couple wins.
Those were
for me probably
tight.
And something I've been watching closely because I remember week 4, the Niners are 3-0. That's an interesting fluke for the second worst team in the NFL last year. They're the real deal.
Yeah,
I watched that game. Kyle Allen, who stepped up in Cam Newton's wake and played very well, went into this game with no interceptions, left with 3.
Did you see that pick by Bosa?
That was something.
Nick Bosa is dominant at this point.
And he was unhealthy in the preseason, so it had been quiet for the non-Kyler Murray consensus.
Pretty much the hype
train. The consensus number 1 pick if you aren't the Arizona Cardinals under Cliff Kingsbury. But he's had a great season so far. Great celebration last week. I loved that. It was pouring rain, and he just swam through it after he sealed the game. I like that guy. He's a lot of fun to watch. I'm
just looking at his line from yesterday. 4 tackles, all solo, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, a pass defense, 3 QB hits, and a pick. If that's not what you consider dominant, I don't know what you're watching, because you're obviously not watching football.
Yeah, so Carolina offense came out flat against a very good Niners defense. Scored 13 points to San Francisco's 51 behind Jimmy Garoppolo.
Jimmy played well. 2 TDs, 1 pick. This was Tevin Coleman's game.
Oh, my God.
105 yards, 3 touchdowns. You never expect that out of Tevin Coleman. No. If you're watching this Niners team, you expect that to be a Matt Breida game. It wasn't.
Yeah, I think I'd expect most of it. But, yeah, I don't want to say historic, but dominant games from Tevin Coleman and Nick Bosa. That was just something. That was a good game. And you know what? 49ers are the real deal. I wouldn't be too surprised to see him representing the NFC deep into this
At this point, neither would I. We're already at the midway point of the season. We had a little quick talk about it, on Friday about the NFL's playoff picture. But
all of a sudden, football season goes fast.
Yeah,
and if you blink, you're suddenly 8 weeks in. One game I was super excited to see, a little bit less after Mahomes' injury a week or 2 ago. Packers over the Chiefs without Patrick Mahomes. Aaron Rodgers is playing great.
I'll be honest with this one, though. I'm not sure, even if Mahomes plays, I don't know if the Chiefs win this game.
Neither do I.
Because Matt Moore didn't play poorly at all. Matt Moore played a good game, 24-36.
He kind of what you needed, Out
of a backup, yeah. You expect worse out of a backup.
Yeah, your goal is serviceable and hope that you've got enough talent around him and enough defense.
He played well.
Yeah, he had a good game. But, just not enough against, this is a good Packers team.
It really is.
I don't like it. The rest of the NFC North doesn't like it.
Definitely does not like it. I've mostly been surprised by this Green Bay defense and just how tight they've been playing. Like, all these games seem really tight to the chest, but they're winning. You know, the Packers they're bending, but they're not breaking. You know, and that's really all it takes, or all you really need when you've got Aaron Rodgers playing the way that he is right now.
Yeah, everybody's giving him a game for the most part, but a win's a win at the end of the day. Except the Detroit Lions game, that was not a win. I'm saying the Lions won against the Packers, and I cannot be convinced otherwise.
Except for the final score, which should not have been the final score at all, but, you know, hey, zebra's going to zebra.
Will not be accepting comments on that game at this time. Anything else going on in the NFL that, you know, trade deadline coming up quickly?
Oh, is it? I completely forget about that. See, the thing is, like, with football, the trade deadline's not as, quote, active as, say, other sports like the NBA, NHL, or even baseball sometimes. But you don't even realize it sometimes.
Yeah, but you know what? It's starting. It is getting to that point where teams are like, "Hey, are we making a playoff push this year, or are we resigning ourselves? Like, all right, maybe it's time to start moving some guys, or maybe it's time to try and get the pieces, even if we got to give up picks, because we think maybe like that's going to be a pretty low pick. We think we're going to do well this year, so maybe it's worth it to trade for a guy." Recent trade deal just came out during the show. Jets are moving defensive lineman Leonard Williams to the Giants for a third rounder and a 2021 fifth. One kind of interesting thing about the trade, and you know, one thing that a lot of people don't talk about. Obviously, they're football players, but they're people too. They've got families, they've got lives, they own houses or they have apartments. One cool thing about staying, like he gets to stay in New York. You know, doesn't need to uproot his wife and kids, so it's kind of nice. You know, different commute to the practice facilities, but on Sundays he's going to be driving to the same spot.
Yeah.
He will take on the Jets as a Giant in Week 12.
Yeah, there have been actually a couple other moves or things going on in the NFL that I completely just kind of blanked on. The Arizona Cardinals have traded for Kenyon Drake from the Dolphins for a conditional pick in 2020. That's really good, actually, for the Cardinals. I mean, they're not a great team, and I don't think they make the playoffs, like, at all. But they've got 2 injured running backs, and when you've got a young quarterback that you're trying to develop in Kyler Murray, it's always good to have a run game, at least an established running back as well, to really lean on. And one other thing, J.J. Watt.
Yeah.
Out for the rest of the season. He's done for the year. He got hurt in Houston's win over Oakland on Sunday. I don't know. Yeah, that probably not a great injury. They're thinking he tore his pectoral muscle.
Yeah.
And I've never done that. I bet it's not comfortable. I bet that hurts a lot. Not much else going on in the NFL other than that.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of little stories. And one thing I think is interesting about the Kenyon Drake trade, that was something that confused me a little bit. I mean, Kenyon Drake hasn't been playing the past couple of years like he used to.
No.
Underutilized by Adam Gase while he was still in Miami, and then all of a sudden, and then having quarterbacks that other teams weren't scared about. But this Arizona team's facing light boxes at the highest rate of any team in the NFL. Suddenly they may need to start adapting and putting another guy there, or either that or Drake might start playing like the player he used to be.
I mean, at that point, you expect him to definitely ask for a pretty hefty raise by the time it's the offseason. And I don't know if Arizona is going to shell out that money, especially when they're already paying David Johnson and Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect them to, but where they're at right now, I think it's a good pickup. I think it's a smart pickup if you want to, give your fans something to root for. And then I think all I've got left in the NFL is one statistic that I thought was really interesting. I think Russell Wilson's been playing exceptionally well this season.
Of course.
The Seahawks are looking pretty good, but what this was kind of illuminating. Their first half schedule, teams were 0-8, 2-4, 3-4, 2-4, 1-7. Their point differential, plus 12.
Whoa.
That's it.
Whoa.
So, I don't know.
Does that So for me, does that say more about Russell Wilson or just that Seahawks team in general? Because Russell Wilson, I think, is in the upper echelon of NFL quarterback right now.
No, I completely agree. For me, Russ has been the reason to watch these Seahawks games, and maybe the reason I've been a bit more of a Seahawks believer this year than this kind of stat says they deserve to be believed
yeah.
in. So we'll see how that develops. I mean, maybe a couple of the teams they played wind up with positive records. Maybe they start playing better teams and they come out with wins, or maybe they don't start playing better teams and they come out with wins anyway. But you got anything else in the NFL? Because I've just got one more comment.
No, I really don't. Like you just said, looking at Seattle now, they're 6-2. But a lot of these games are tighter than they should be.
Yeah, an awful lot tighter than they should be. And kind of last thing I've got in the NFL, way too early to start talking draft, but Dolphins 2020 picks, 3 firsts and 2 seconds.
Whoa.
3 sixths. Oh my! I mean, and they've got a comp pick coming, and they've got Houston's first and second in 21.
Year. I mean, tank. They're tanking. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. I don't know what they'll do with the first pick, especially because it obviously seems like for them, Josh Rosen is not the guy, which I just still don't understand at all why they made that trade.
I feel bad for the guy. One of the worst situations you can be put in, having to learn new systems. Probably going to be in a new city under a new system again next year.
It wouldn't surprise me any if he was.
No, and you know,
is he Washington bound?
He could be.
He could be. He really could be because
for
that
for the guy's career.
Mess.
I mean, probably the only thing worse than getting traded around as a young quarterback and being on awful teams or tanking teams is being on the Redskins.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong. I mean, look at Haskins. I was a huge Haskins believer going out, like coming from college to the NFL, but then again, it's the Redskins.
I can't blame players for how they play on that team.
No,
because I mean, you got to avoid getting hurt.
2 words:
Dan
Snyder.
So I think that's all we've got on the NFL for today. We're going to take another quick break. We'll be back with some World Series action. The Stros take a 3-2 lead over the Nationals.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. We're just going to stick with it just a little bit longer and talk about the World Series. On Friday, we may have made a little bit of a mistake.
On Friday, the Nationals had won 5-4 and 12-3. We're leading the series 2-0 after taking 2 games against
Houston.
Cole and Verlander in Houston. All of a sudden, it's a little different.
The Stros are back, baby. The Stros are back. They got 3 straight dubs in Washington, D.C., and they're going back to Houston for Game 6. They can clinch.
They can win the World Series tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. And you know what's most illuminating to me? The first game was a good game, 5-4. Nationals blew them out in Houston, 12-3 in Game 2. The last 3 games that Houston's won, they've held the Nationals to 1 run, scoring 4, 8, and 7, respectively.
Yeah, the defense has really stepped up, and so has the pitching staff. I was kind of surprised with how well Greinke played. That was really surprising to me, and how the bullpen played for Houston. And then last night, come on. Garrett Cole just had a return to form, unlike any I've really seen ever, really.
Those are the games you sign guys like Garrett Cole to play.
I mean, I just want to look at his line because he was just disgusting. He threw 7. Okay, that's about normal for a starter.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And that's pretty good.
Gave up 3 hits. That's really good. And the 1 run against him was a single shot by Juan Soto.
Which means he basically threw 1 bad pitch all night.
Yeah, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts. 9.
He's a difference maker.
I almost feel bad a little bit because the Nationals should have had a stronger pitcher on the mound. They were supposed to with Scherzer.
Yeah, Scherzer was expected to start. I believe neck spasms wound up missing the game.
Yeah,
Did you hear anything more about that? Because to me, that's not something that sounds incredibly serious, but obviously something that means you can't be a starting pitcher in a World Series game.
Yeah, I saw an interview with him post-game, and he obviously was very disappointed he didn't get to play. Quote, he couldn't even get himself dressed that morning. He needed his wife to help him get dressed because he said he woke up completely locked up. He could barely move. And I mean, so what they had to do is after his last start, they gave him a day of rest, and he started having neck spasms. They were going to give him, I think it was a cortisone shot in his shoulder to see if that'll, help alleviate some of that. And they decided, hey, let's hold off, see how it goes the next day. That next day was, well, yesterday. He was locked up, couldn't really move, couldn't do anything, so they gave him the injection. He should be making a recovery. Yeah, you're right. That doesn't seem like anything serious, but
I mean, it's one thing you really like out of your starting pitcher is being able to
move their neck. Yeah.
You know, it's definitely that's a very appreciable part of the skill set. It's, pitch selection, being able to put your balls in the right spot, being able to be decent on defense if you can, and being able to move.
Yeah, it's...
Some would argue one of the most critical parts of playing any position in baseball is having the physical capability of moving around.
Of moving, yeah. Of also, getting your jersey and your hat on right. I'd reckon that's probably up there, too.
Just show up with neck spasms shirtless.
Oh, gosh. But
I'd watch the game, but all of a sudden, I mean, you give the guy a day of rest and you say, hey, let's hold off on his cortisone shot for a little while. All of a sudden, the World Series is going to be over by Wednesday, or on Wednesday.
Yeah, and that game is in Houston.
The last two are in Houston.
Yeah.
They need to take one of them. Nationals need to get them both. So far, the away team has won every single game.
So, yeah, that's...
But Houston's also won 3 straight.
That's so interesting to me, is how that momentum is swung both ways. Like, the pendulum on this series is all over the place. And the thing is, it's going to be another really good pitching matchup tomorrow night. That's Strasburg and Verlander.
All of a sudden, it's an elimination game for the Nationals.
And you don't know how they're going to react to that because they've never been here before. They were only in a single elimination game so far. That's a wild card. Other than that, they swept. They've never been here before. You'll just have
not
to
only
see.
have the players never been here before, the franchise has never been here before. The fans have never been there before.
Yep.
I mean, I know the Nationals do have a lot of transplant fans. That's the nature of being a team in Washington, D.C. That's fine with that. They're not front runners just because they like the team of the town they live in now. But it's something that's new. I'm excited to see how they respond to, being in a World Series elimination game.
Yeah.
So, Nationals travel to Houston, take on the Stros at 7 o'clock tomorrow and on Wednesday.
There is a little bit more news going on in baseball that we could just, just touch on. We got a little bit of time left. Two things. Well, a couple things, actually. The MLB, did you see what happened in the stands last night? 2 fans were banned from the games.
I did see what happened. It's something that you wouldn't be able to show on TV. But
they did.
Yeah, they showed it. It was live.
Good Lord.
2 fans kind of taking a little inspiration from Scherzer not being able to get his shirt on before the game, and
obviously
banned from every MLB game in the future.
And they could not keep their shirts on. Let's just put it
I
at
do
that.
now follow both of those people on Twitter.
Hey, that's on you. Other quick news hitters. The Pirates fired their general manager. The Red Sox hired former Tampa Bay Rays VP of Player Ops, Chaim Bloom, to lead their baseball ops.
And he did a really good job in Tampa Bay.
I don't know. I love this move for the Red Sox. But as a Rays fan, I hate it so much because I really think that he's put everything in place where this team, should be set up for a future full of success.
Yeah, and that's the way he's a guy who builds a team the way you want to build a team. It's sustainable, it's homegrown talent, and then getting the big guys when you need to. But VP of Player Operations, it's a weird title because you don't have... I mean, by the time they're playing games, I want to say it's almost out of your hands.
Yeah, it is, but at that same time, you've got to have good decisions at the top, and they trickle down to the bottom.
Yeah, and I like that move for the Sox. I know you're a Rays fan, so I'm sure you feel this as well. But a friend of mine who's actually a assistant scout, some sort of player recruitment title for one of their minor league teams for the Rays, but actually Ole Miss grad too. She's what? That's a present that's gonna be felt in Tampa Bay. And that's going to be missing from them.
Definitely.
I'm sure they'll bounce back. He did a really good job there. I feel like they're poised to, they've got a lot to build on in the next couple seasons.
And I think one other thing, the Yankees have decided not to extend the contract of their pitching coach, Larry Rothschild. He's been there for almost a decade, since 2011. Rumor has it he will be going to Philly to link back up with Joe Girardi, who's now the manager in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's I don't know too much about what a pitching coach really does. I don't know how much of it's just talent, how much of it is. Do you scheme
Yeah,
as a pitching coach, as a staff, or do you kind of do it individually per pitcher?
So I think it's a lot of the time it's less about the pitcher and more about the batter that they're facing.
Yeah, and that's something that it comes down to who's on the mound. But I mean, if Philly thinks he's got a lot to bring to their organization, I mean, good luck to him. So I think that's all the time we've got for this week. We'll be back on Friday at 6:00. Ole Miss has got a game this week. We'll be previewing that. A lot of college football and NFL coming up. And we'll be able to recap the end of the MLB season as either the Nationals or the Astros take the World Series this year. Until then, I've been John Finnegan.
And I've been George Ruggiero.
And this has been the G and Fin Show on 92.1 Rebel Radio.